I'm Bernadette, 34 years old, and until last month, I was the senior software developer who built TechVision's Customer Connect platform from scratch. That's right. 24 months of my life poured into creating the system, now generating 40% of company revenue. So imagine my shock when Michael, our department director, handed my project to Wesley, a 23-year-old summer intern who couldn't even locate the project files without my help. What they never expected, my quiet resignation would bring their entire operation crashing down around them. Before I dive into how my resignation crashed their entire development schedule, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had your hard work stolen by someone else. My journey into the tech world started at MIT, where I graduated with honors with a degree in computer science. I was always the girl who would rather build something than play with dolls, much to my traditional mother's dismay. Coding became my sanctuary, a place where logic ruled and hard work actually paid off. At least that's what I believed. After graduation, I worked for a small startup where I learned to code fast and adapt even faster. The experience was invaluable, but after 3 years I wanted something more stable with growth opportunities. That's when TechVision caught my eye. They had a reputation for innovation and a corporate culture that supposedly valued its employees. I joined TechVision as a mid-level developer but quickly proved my worth. Within 18 months, I was promoted to a senior position managing smaller projects and contributing to the company's core products. The promotion came with a modest raise and a lot more responsibility, but I didn't mind. I loved the challenge and took pride in my work. The company culture initially seemed exactly what I'd hoped for: collaborative, supportive, and merit-based. At least that's what the glossy brochure promised. My department was led by Michael Harrison, a 47-year-old industry veteran who initially took me under his wing. He had an impressive background with several successful products under his belt, and in the beginning he was generous, with both praise and constructive criticism. He seemed to recognize my potential, and would often invite me to sit in on leadership meetings to get a feel for the bigger picture. I genuinely looked up to him. My immediate supervisor, Sandra Winters, was competent, but conflict-avoidant to a fault. She was a technical manager who preferred to focus on the code rather than the politics, which I respected. However, her reluctance to rock the boat would later become part of my problem. Then there was Darren Phillips, a colleague whose ambition far outpaced his technical abilities. He was charming in meetings and skilled at taking credit for other people's work. He had joined the company just a few months before me, but had already mastered the art of corporate politics. I noticed early on how he would insert himself into successful projects just before completion, somehow managing to be front and center during the victory laps. Fortunately, I also found an ally in Lisa Cooper, another senior developer who became both a colleague and friend. She had been with TechVision for 5 years and knew the unwritten rules. Lisa was straightforward, brilliant with database architecture, and had a talent for cutting through nonsense with humor. And then there was Wesley Parker, the 23-year-old intern who would later be positioned to take over my life's work. When he first arrived, I thought nothing of it. Just another summer intern fresh out of college with a computer science degree from a state university and a confidence that hadn't yet been tempered by real-world experience. What I didn't know then was that Wesley was the nephew of Edward Parker, one of TechVision's board members. The Customer Connect platform began as a concept I pitched during an innovation week. The company needed a better way to manage client relationships, track interactions, and predict client needs. Existing solutions were costly and didn't integrate well with our other systems. I saw an opportunity to build something tailored specifically for our business model. My proposal was approved, and I was given a small team to begin development. I architected the entire system from database structure to user interface. Customer Connect was designed to gather data from multiple touchpoints, analyze client behavior patterns, and provide actionable insights to our sales and support teams. The platform would allow TechVision to anticipate client needs, reducing churn and increasing upsell opportunities. The technical challenges were significant. We needed real-time data processing, secure access for clients to their own portals, and seamless integration with existing systems. I spent countless nights solving complex problems, refining algorithms, and ensuring the platform would scale as the company grew. My team respected my leadership because I never asked them to do anything I wouldn't do myself. After 18 months of development, we launched the first version. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Client satisfaction scores increased by 30%. Sales teams reported a 25% increase in upselling success. Support tickets decreased as the system proactively addressed common issues before they became problems. By 6 months post-launch, Customer Connect was generating 40% of the company's revenue, either directly or by supporting other products. I was proud of what we'd built. This wasn't just code to me. It was a creation that represented thousands of hours of problem-solving and innovation. The platform bore the marks of my particular coding style and problem-solving approach. Anyone familiar with my work could see my fingerprints all over it. It wasn't long before Darren started showing up at Customer Connect presentations. He hadn't contributed a single line of code, but suddenly he was just stopping by important client demos, inserting comments that suggested involvement. I noticed Michael allowing this, even encouraging it, by inviting Darren to meetings that were previously limited to the core team. Still, I wasn't overly concerned. The technical details were complex enough that no one could fake their way through a serious discussion about the platform's architecture. My position seemed secure, and the project was my baby. I had no idea what was coming. The first real warning sign came during a Monday morning department meeting. Michael was making the usual announcements when he suddenly brightened and said, "And I'd like to introduce a special talent who's joining us for the summer, Wesley Parker. Wesley comes highly recommended, and we're expecting great things from him." The introduction seemed disproportionately enthusiastic for an intern, but I didn't think much of it until Michael added, "Bernadette, I'd like you to take Wesley under your wing. Show him how Customer Connect works. He has some interesting ideas that might benefit the platform." My heart sank. I was already working 60-hour weeks managing the platform and planning the next major update. Now I was expected to babysit an intern too. Still being a team player, I agreed with a smile while mentally reorganizing my schedule. Wesley appeared at my desk an hour later, designer coffee in hand, and wearing what seemed to be a deliberately rumpled button-down that probably cost more than my entire outfit. His handshake was limp, his smile practiced. "So you're going to show me how all this works?" he asked, gesturing vaguely at my monitors filled with code. "Yes," I replied, pulling up a chair for him. "Let's start with an overview of the architecture." It quickly became apparent that Wesley lacked even basic programming knowledge. He didn't know what an API was. He confused Java with JavaScript. He asked if we could just use Excel instead of our database system. Each question revealed a new gap in his fundamental understanding. I created a simplified training program for him, starting with the basics. He would nod along as if he understood, then ask the exact same question the next day. I began documenting everything in writing so I could refer him back to previous explanations. 2 weeks into his internship, Wesley accompanied me to a client demo for a major financial services company. I had spent days preparing, making sure every feature worked flawlessly. 5 minutes into my presentation, while I was explaining the security features, Wesley interrupted. "What Bernadette is trying to say is that your data is super safe with us," he said with a grin. "Like Fort Knox safe, but without the hassle." The client's CISO frowned. Actually, I was interested in the specific encryption protocols being used for data at rest and in transit. I smoothly provided the technical details while Wesley scrolled through his phone. After the meeting, instead of apologizing, he told me I should lighten up and not be so technical with clients. That evening, I mentioned the incident to Lisa over drinks. "Do you know who Wesley is?" she asked, lowering her voice. When I shook my head, she continued, "He's Edward Parker's nephew. Board member Edward Parker." Suddenly, the special treatment made sense. "So he's here because of nepotism." "Bingo," Lisa said. "And between us, this isn't his first internship here. He was in marketing last summer and apparently made such a mess, they quietly moved him out." In the following weeks, Wesley was increasingly included in Customer Connect meetings. Michael would say things like, "Wesley, why don't you join us? Good exposure for you." Despite contributing nothing of value, Wesley was given a seat at the table while team members who actually did the work were left out. During one product meeting, Wesley spoke up after I presented new features for the upcoming release. "What if we added a social media integration component?" he suggested. "Let clients share their satisfaction metrics directly to Twitter or LinkedIn." The idea was problematic for numerous reasons, including client confidentiality and data security, but Michael nodded enthusiastically. "Interesting approach, Wesley. Very forward-thinking." When I raised concerns about the privacy implications, Michael waved them away. "Details can be worked out later." I like the innovative thinking. My unease grew as Wesley was given more visibility with upper management. He began to appear in meetings with the executive team, where development staff, including me, were not invited. I only discovered this when a VP referred to that great discussion with Wesley about Customer Connect's future. The pivotal moment came during a feature review. I had just completed a predictive analytics module that could forecast client needs based on historical data patterns. It had taken me 3 months of intensive work, including many weekends. During the presentation to department heads, Wesley chimed in as I was explaining the algorithm. "This was a challenging feature to implement," he said, as if he had been involved. "We really pushed the boundaries of what the platform could do." "We?" My jaw nearly dropped. Wesley hadn't written a single line of code for this, or any other feature. I waited for Michael to correct this misstatement, but he simply nodded and added, "The team has done exceptional work here." The team, not Bernadette, not the woman who had actually created the feature. Just the team now, apparently including Wesley. After the meeting, I tried to address it with Michael, but he was rushing to another appointment. "Great job today," he said distractedly. "Wesley's really coming along, isn't he?" Frustrated, I spoke with Sandra instead. "I'm concerned about the messaging around Customer Connect," I told her. "Wesley is being positioned as having contributed to features he's had nothing to do with." Sandra looked uncomfortable. "I understand your frustration, but Wesley is well connected. Michael is probably just trying to keep everyone happy. These things happen in corporate environments." "But it's not right," I insisted. "I've put my heart and soul into this platform." "I know," she said sympathetically. "And your work is recognized. But my advice, be patient. Interns come and go. Your position is secure." I wanted to believe her, but something in her expression made me wonder if she really believed it herself. The quarterly company meeting was held in the main auditorium, with all 300 employees in attendance. Our CEO, Jonathan Reed, stood on stage, reviewing the company's performance, highlighting Customer Connect as the breakthrough product that had exceeded all revenue projections. "Now to talk about the exciting future of Customer Connect, here's Michael Harrison," Jonathan announced, yielding the stage. Michael strode up confidently, bringing up slides I had prepared for him the previous week. "Customer Connect has transformed how we serve our clients," he began. "And we're just getting started. Today I'm pleased to announce a major expansion of the platform." He went on to outline the roadmap I had developed, describing new features and integration capabilities that would further cement Customer Connect as the company's flagship product. "The team has been working tirelessly on this vision," Michael said, gesturing to a section of the audience. "Wesley, stand up so everyone can see one of our rising stars." My stomach churned as Wesley stood waving with a practiced smile. I remained seated, unacknowledged, despite being the actual architect of everything Michael was presenting. After the meeting, I requested time with Michael. We sat in his glass-walled office where he immediately started reviewing the timeline for the expansion. "Before we get to that," I interrupted, "I wanted to discuss the presentation today." Michael looked up, eyebrows raised. "What about it?" "You highlighted Wesley as being key to Customer Connect, but he's an intern who's contributed nothing to the platform. Meanwhile, I wasn't mentioned at all, despite creating the entire system and the expansion roadmap." Michael leaned back in his chair. "Bernadette, you're a valued technical resource, absolutely. But part of leadership is developing new talent. Wesley brings a fresh perspective, and he has excellent people skills. The higher-ups are impressed with him. People skills don't build enterprise software, I pointed out. And what exactly is this fresh perspective? He barely understands what an API does. Michael's expression hardened slightly. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Technical expertise is important, but so is attitude. Wesley is eager to learn and presents well. Perhaps you could focus more on mentoring him instead of feeling threatened. Threatened? By someone who doesn't know the difference between front-end and back-end development? That's enough, Michael said firmly. Wesley is part of this team now, and I expect you to help bring him up to speed. Customer Connect is a company product, not your personal project. Remember that. I left his office feeling dismissed and disrespected. The message was clear: my technical contributions were valued only insofar as they could be attributed to others, particularly Wesley. The following weeks brought more of the same. I worked weekends to complete critical updates for the expansion, while Wesley rarely showed up outside of 9 to 5 hours. Yet somehow, he was always present for important presentations and executive meetings. One morning, I noticed an email thread discussing a major feature I was developing. Wesley was copied on every message, despite having no role in the development. When a question arose about implementation details, Wesley replied to all, with a vague jargon-filled response that demonstrated no actual understanding of the issue. To my shock, the VP of Product responded, "Thanks for the insight, Wesley. Good to have your eyes on this." Meanwhile, I found myself increasingly excluded from strategic meetings about Customer Connect's future. When I asked Sandra about a product strategy session I hadn't been invited to, she looked away uncomfortably. It was mostly business discussion, not technical. Michael probably thought it wasn't relevant to your work. Not relevant. It's about the future of the platform I built, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Sandra just shrugged helplessly. You know how these things go. Later that week, I overheard Darren talking to another developer by the coffee machine. Wesley's definitely on the fast track, he said. Smart kid. Connected, too. Edward Parker sings his praises to the board constantly. When he noticed me, Darren smirked. Oh, Bernadette, we were just discussing the Customer Connect team. You mean the actual developers who build it? Or the people who take credit for our work, I asked. Darren's smirk faded. Careful, Bernadette. Not everyone appreciates your intensity. Sometimes knowing your place is more important than being right. I walked away seething. Knowing your place. The implication was clear. My place was to do the work, not to receive the credit. The stress began affecting my health. I developed insomnia, lying awake, replaying conversations, and wondering what I could have done differently. My anxiety spiked before meetings, knowing I'd likely face another example of Wesley being positioned as Customer Connect's wonderkind, while my contributions were minimized. My boyfriend James noticed the change. One evening, as I sat on our couch staring blankly at my laptop instead of the movie we were supposedly watching, he paused the screen. You haven't been yourself for weeks, he said, taking my hand. This Wesley situation is consuming you. Because it's not fair, I replied. I've given everything to this project. Years of my life, countless nights and weekends. And now this kid, with no skills, but the right last name, is being set up to take credit for all of it. Then you need to stand up for yourself, James said firmly. Document everything. Your contributions, the hours, the features you've built. Create a record they can't ignore. Taking his advice, I began meticulously documenting my work. I saved emails, meeting notes, and code commits. I created a timeline of Customer Connect's development, clearly showing my role in every significant milestone. If it came to a confrontation, I wanted evidence on my side. But the breaking point came when I was working late one evening. Most of the office had emptied out, but voices from Michael's office caught my attention. His door was ajar, and as I passed by, I clearly heard him say to Wesley, Starting next month, you'll be taking point on Customer Connect going forward. Bernadette will handle the technical side. but you'll be the face of the project for the executive team and clients. Wesley's response chilled me. Don't worry about Bernadette. She'll fall in line once she realizes how things work around here. I froze in place, unable to believe what I was hearing. Not only was my project being handed to someone else, but they were discussing me as if I were a problem to be managed, rather than the person who had created the company's most valuable asset. In that moment, something broke inside me. All my dedication, all my loyalty to Tech Vision, crumbled under the weight of this betrayal. I walked quietly back to my desk, my mind suddenly clear. This was never going to change. No amount of hard work or technical brilliance would overcome the politics at play. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider an option I had previously dismissed leaving. The annual company showcase event was TechVision's opportunity to impress clients, partners, and industry analysts with our latest innovations. Held at an upscale hotel downtown, it was a full day of presentations, demos, and networking. Customer Connect 2 was scheduled as the highlight of the day, with a 45-minute slot just before lunch. I had spent weeks preparing for this presentation. Customer Connect 2 included groundbreaking features that would cement our competitive advantage, advanced predictive analytics, customizable client dashboards, and an AI-powered recommendation engine. I had created detailed slides, prepared demonstrations, and rehearsed my delivery countless times. This was my opportunity to remind everyone whose vision had made Customer Connect a success. 2 hours before my presentation, Michael approached me in the preparation room where I was doing a final review of the demo environment. "Slight change of plans," he said casually. "Wesley will be leading the Customer Connect presentation." I stared at him in disbelief. "You can't be serious. This is the most important presentation of the year. Wesley doesn't understand the technical details of what we've built." "That's why you'll be there to support him," Michael replied. "The executives want to see Wesley take a more visible role with Customer Connect. He connects well with the business audience." "Michael, he literally asked me yesterday what an SQL query was. He can't answer technical questions about the platform." "It's not a technical audience. They want to hear about business value, not coding details." His tone made it clear this wasn't up for debate. "The decision has been made, Bernadette. Wesley will present, and you'll be there to assist if needed." I watched numbly as Michael walked over to Wesley, who was chatting with a group of executives. He hadn't even bothered to review the presentation materials I'd prepared. Michael patted him on the shoulder and said something that made the group laugh. The casual betrayal of it burned like acid. When our slot arrived, Wesley took the stage with unearned confidence. He began with a rehearsed introduction that someone had clearly written for him, then launched into describing Customer Connect's business impact using statistics I had compiled. Things derailed quickly when he attempted to demo the new features. He clicked on the wrong menu items, couldn't remember the login credentials, despite them being right in the notes, and froze when trying to explain how the predictive analytics actually worked. An awkward silence fell over the room as Wesley fumbled with the dashboard. From the second row, I could see confusion on the faces of clients who had paid millions for our software. Finally, a client raised his hand. "Can you explain how the new recommendation engine differentiates between seasonal trends and actual client preference changes?" Wesley stared blankly, then offered a vague response about advanced algorithms and synergistic data fusion that meant absolutely nothing. The client frowned. "That doesn't actually answer my question. Can you be more specific about the methodology?" More uncomfortable silence followed. I saw Michael shifting anxiously at the back of the room. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. The reputation of my creation was on the line. I stood up. "If I may address that question," without waiting for permission, I walked to the front. The recommendation engine uses a dual-layer analysis system. The first layer isolates temporary factors like seasonal variations, market fluctuations, and promotional responses. The second layer identifies persistent preference patterns that remain consistent across these variables. This allows us to distinguish between what a client needs consistently versus temporarily. Relief washed over the audience as I took control of the presentation. For the next 30 minutes, I demonstrated the new features, properly answered detailed questions, and highlighted the business value while explaining the technical innovation that made it possible. Wesley stood awkwardly to the side, occasionally nodding, as if he were simply allowing me to handle the technical details. When the presentation ended, the audience applauded enthusiastically. As people filed out for lunch, several executives approached the stage, but not to speak with me. They surrounded Wesley, congratulating him on his platform and the impressive new features. Wesley accepted their praise without once acknowledging my rescue of his disastrous presentation. Michael joined the circle, beaming with pride, as if Wesley had just performed brilliantly. Not once did anyone thank me or recognize my contribution, despite the fact that I had just saved what would have been an embarrassing failure. I packed up my laptop in silence, invisible, despite having been the only person on stage who actually understood the product. As I was about to leave the ballroom, my phone chimed with a new email. It was a company-wide announcement from Michael. I'm pleased to announce that Wesley Parker has been appointed Project Lead for Customer Connect, effective immediately. Wesley has demonstrated exceptional understanding of the platform and its business applications. Please join me in congratulating Wesley on this well-deserved promotion. My hands trembled as I read the message. Project Lead. For a platform he couldn't even demo properly. For my creation, my vision, my countless hours of work. As if on cue, Wesley approached me with that same smug smile. Bernadette, got a minute? I'd like you to catch me up on the system architecture when we get back to the office. As project lead, I should probably understand how all this works under the hood. Something in me snapped at his casual entitlement. The audacity of him asking me to teach him the basics of a system he was now supposedly leading. Sure, Wesley, I replied, my voice eerily calm, even to my own ears. We can go over the fundamentals of computer science while we're at it. Maybe start with what a variable is. His smile faltered. There's no need for attitude. We're on the same team. Are we? I asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're being handed credit for my work while having no idea what you're doing. Wesley's face hardened. This is exactly why Michael thought a change in leadership was necessary. You're too emotionally attached to the code. This is business, Bernadette. It's not personal. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Not personal. I've spent 2 years of my life building this platform, and now you're suddenly in charge because your uncle sits on the board. Tell me how that's not personal. Wesley flushed. My relationship with Edward has nothing to do with this. I earned this position. By doing what exactly? You can't even log into the system without help. By understanding what the executives actually care about, he snapped. They don't care about your clever code or elegant solutions. They care about results and relationships, something you clearly don't understand. Before I could respond, Michael appeared beside us. Is everything all right here? He asked, his tone falsely pleasant. Just fine, I said. Wesley was explaining how he earned his new position, despite knowing nothing about the platform he's now leading. Michael's face tightened. Bernadette, I think we should discuss this privately. Now. We moved to a quiet corner of the now empty ballroom. Michael didn't bother to hide his displeasure. What was that about? You undermined Wesley in front of executives and clients. Undermined him? I saved that presentation from disaster. He couldn't answer basic questions about the platform. He's still learning the technical details. He's been learning for months and still doesn't understand the fundamentals. Yet you've made him project lead. Michael's expression darkened. This attitude is exactly the problem. You're not a team player, Bernadette. You've been resistant to integrating Wesley from the beginning, because he contributes nothing while taking credit for my work. Your work, Customer Connect, is a company product developed with company resources. Your territorial behavior is unprofessional and frankly concerning. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. So my concern about an unqualified person being put in charge of a critical system is unprofessional. Wesley brings qualities to the role that you lack. He communicates effectively with executives and understands the business perspective. Not everything is about code. No, apparently it's about who your uncle is, I said, before I could stop myself. Michael's face reddened. That's enough. You should be grateful for the opportunity to collaborate with fresh talent instead of complaining. Many developers would appreciate the chance to work on a successful platform like Customer Connect, regardless of who gets the credit. His words hit me like a physical blow. Grateful. I should be grateful while watching someone else take credit for my creation. I'll expect you to fully support Wesley in his new role, Michael continued. That means sharing all project documentation, bringing him up to speed on the technical aspects, and maintaining a positive attitude. Is that clear? I nodded mutely, not trusting myself to speak. Good, Michael said clearly, considering the matter settled. The car back to the office leaves in 20 minutes. I watched him walk away, joining Wesley and the executives who were still chatting by the stage. They laughed at something completely at ease while I stood alone, suddenly seeing my future at TechVision with painful clarity. That night I barely slept. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the day's events and Michael's words. You should be grateful. The phrase kept echoing in my mind, each repetition stoking my anger. By morning I knew what I had to do. The day after the showcase, I called Rachel, an attorney friend from college who specialized in employment law. Over lunch at a cafe far from TechVision's offices, I explained my situation. Before you do anything drastic, let's talk about your options, Rachel said, after listening carefully. What's your goal here? Do you want to fight this, or make a clean break? I considered the question. Honestly, I don't want to spend the next year of my life in meetings with HR and lawyers. I just want my work recognized and respected. That's understandable. Based on what you've told me, you have potential grounds for a complaint, but these cases are rarely straightforward, especially when it comes to credit for work. She paused, taking a sip of her water. Have you considered simply finding a better position elsewhere? Your skills are in demand. You could probably find a company that actually values your contributions. The suggestion was like a weight lifting from my shoulders. I had been so focused on the injustice that I hadn't seriously considered the simplest solution: walking away. What about my work? Customer Connect is my creation. Did you sign an IP agreement when you joined TechVision? I nodded. Then legally the company owns the platform, but your knowledge and skills belong to you. You can't take the code, but you can certainly take your expertise elsewhere. Over the next 2 weeks, I executed my plan with methodical precision. First, I updated my resume, highlighting my role in developing Customer Connect, while being careful not to claim ownership of the intellectual property. I reached out to former colleagues who had moved to other companies, discreetly letting them know I was open to new opportunities. Within days, I had interviews lined up with 3 competing firms. Each was familiar with Customer Connect's reputation in the industry, and all were eager to meet the person who had architected it. By the end of the second week, I had 2 solid offers, both with substantial salary increases and appropriate titles: Director of Software Development and Chief Technology Officer. Meanwhile, at TechVision, I maintained a professional demeanor. I created detailed documentation of all my work with clear notes on the status of current features and known issues. I organized the project repositories, adding comments to complex sections of code. I was building a paper trail that would make it impossible to claim I hadn't properly transitioned my responsibilities. I watched with quiet satisfaction as Wesley struggled to understand even the most basic aspects of the system he was now supposedly leading. One morning he appeared at my desk in a panic. I can't find the project files for the recommendation engine update, he said, running a hand through his carefully styled hair. Michael wants a status update by noon. The files are in the main repository in the folder labeled Recommendation Engine Update, I replied calmly. He blinked. Right, I checked there. Did you look in the branch called Rec Engine 2? 0? That's where the active development is happening. More confusion crossed his face. Branch. I suppressed a sigh and pulled up the repository on my screen. Here, Let me show you how to navigate the version control system again. For 20 minutes, I walked him through the basics of Git for what must have been the 10th time. He nodded, as if it all made sense, but his eyes had that glazed look I'd come to recognize as his "I'm not understanding any of this, but won't admit it" expression. As he left, I smiled to myself. Soon this would no longer be my problem. With my new position secured, I sat down and crafted a resignation letter. It was professionally worded, expressing gratitude for the opportunities I'd had at TechVision while giving the standard 2 weeks' notice. I made no mention of Wesley or my reasons for leaving. The letter was a model of corporate politeness. The next morning, I requested a meeting with Diane from HR. Her surprise was evident when I handed her my resignation letter. "Bernadette, this is unexpected," she said, scanning the document. "You're one of our top performers. Is there anything we can do to change your mind? We could discuss a raise or perhaps a promotion." "Thank you, but I've accepted a position elsewhere," I replied. "May I ask why you're leaving? Was there a specific issue?" I smiled politely. "I'm just ready for a new challenge. I've learned a lot here, but it's time for me to move on. Michael will be very concerned about this, especially with Customer Connect being such a priority. Perhaps you should speak with him before making a final decision." "My decision is final," I said firmly. "As my letter states, I'm giving 2 weeks' notice and will ensure a smooth transition." Diane looked troubled. "At the very least, let me set up a meeting with Michael this afternoon. He'll want to discuss transition plans for Customer Connect." I nodded, knowing the storm that was coming. "Of course. Just let me know when." As I left HR, I passed Wesley in the hallway. He was on his phone looking frustrated. "No, I told you I need admin access to the testing environment," he was saying. "I'm the project lead for Customer Connect." "Yes, that's what I'm trying to tell you. I should already have access." I continued walking, allowing myself a small smile. Reality was already beginning to set in for him. The meeting with Michael was scheduled for 3 o'clock. I arrived precisely on time, resignation letter in hand in case HR hadn't already shared it. Michael was behind his desk, looking unusually serious. Diane from HR sat in the corner, laptop open. "Bernadette," Michael began without preamble, "Diane tells me you're resigning. This comes at a very inconvenient time for the company." "I understand the timing isn't ideal," I replied. "That's why I'm giving 2 weeks' notice and will do everything possible to ensure a smooth transition." "But why leave now? Customer Connect is entering an exciting new phase. Your technical skills are still needed on the project." "I've accepted an opportunity that better aligns with my career goals," I said, keeping my tone neutral. Michael leaned forward. "We can match whatever offer you've received. 10% more, and we could discuss a title change if that's a factor." "It's not about the money or title." "Then what is it about?" Michael's frustration was beginning to show. "Is this because of Wesley's promotion? Because if you're feeling overlooked, we can find ways to recognize your technical contributions while he handles the leadership aspects." I simply smiled. "Wesley's got this." Michael stared at me for a moment, then pulled my resignation letter from a folder on his desk. As he read it again, his face gradually changed color from normal to pink to an almost purple hue. "This is about Wesley, isn't it?" he said, his voice rising. "You're leaving because you don't want to work under him. This is exactly the kind of attitude I was talking about." "I didn't say that," I replied calmly. "Those are your words. Do you have any idea what this will do to the Customer Connect timeline? We have deliverables promised to major clients. The documentation I'm preparing should help with the transition." "Documentation?" Michael almost laughed. "You think documentation can replace your knowledge of the system? The board is expecting the next release in 3 months. How is that supposed to happen without you?" I shrugged slightly. "As you've pointed out many times, Customer Connect is a company product, not my personal project. I'm sure Wesley has everything under control." Michael's face darkened further. "This is unprofessional. You're leaving us in a lurch because your ego can't handle not being in charge. Diane cleared her throat. Michael, let's keep this constructive. Bernadette has the right to resign, and we should focus on transition planning. Michael ignored her. Where are you going? Which competitor poached you? I'd prefer not to discuss my new position, I said. But I assure you, I've signed all the appropriate non-disclosure agreements and understand my obligations regarding TechVision's intellectual property. Michael stood up, pacing behind his desk. You built Customer Connect. You know every line of code. We need at least a month for transition, not 2 weeks. My new position starts in 3 weeks. 2 weeks' notice is standard. Standard doesn't apply to critical personnel. Michael's voice had risen to almost a shout. He took a deep breath, visibly trying to calm himself. When he spoke again, his tone was different, almost pleading. Bernadette, let's be reasonable. You've invested 2 years in Customer Connect. Do you really want to walk away? Now? We can work something out. A different reporting structure, perhaps. Or a parallel leadership role, focusing on the technical architecture, while Wesley handles the business side. Too late, I thought. Too late for compromises. I've made my decision, I said firmly. I'll spend my remaining time documenting everything and helping with the transition, but after 2 weeks, I'll be moving on. Michael slumped back in his chair, the fight going out of him, as he finally realized I wouldn't be persuaded. You've put us in an impossible position, he said quietly. The board will have questions I can't answer. I'm sure Wesley can handle it, I replied, standing up to leave. After all, he's the project lead now. As I walked out of Michael's office, I felt lighter than I had in months. The decision was made. In 2 weeks, TechVision's problems would no longer be mine. My final 2 weeks at TechVision unfolded like a slow-motion train wreck that I watched from a safe distance. I arrived each morning at exactly 9, spent the day methodically documenting every aspect of Customer Connect, and left precisely at 5. No more late nights, no more weekends. My time now belonged to me. I created comprehensive guides for each module of the platform, recorded video walkthroughs of complex procedures, and organized all project documentation into a coherent knowledge base. Everything was meticulously labeled and cross-referenced. No one could say I hadn't done my part for the transition. Wesley's panic grew more evident with each passing day. He would hover around my desk, asking increasingly desperate questions as he began to grasp the enormity of what he didn't know. Could you go over the database schema one more time? He asked on day 3. The API authentication flow isn't making sense to me, he admitted on day 5. By the beginning of the 2nd week, he had dropped all pretense. I don't think I can do this, he confessed during a rare moment of honesty. There's too much to learn. You'll figure it out, I replied with the same empty encouragement he and Michael had offered me countless times. It's just a matter of getting up to speed. Meanwhile, word of my resignation had spread throughout the company. Colleagues stopped by my desk to express surprise, and in many cases understanding. Sandra visited on my 3rd day after giving notice. I should have supported you more, she said quietly, perching on the edge of my desk. I knew what was happening wasn't right. You were in a difficult position, I replied, though part of me did resent her silence when it would have mattered. Still, I'm sorry. For what it's worth, Michael is in full panic mode. He's been in emergency meetings with the executive team every day. Lisa was more direct when we had lunch together. The place is imploding, she said, with a certain satisfaction. Nobody knows how Customer Connect actually works except you. Wesley is drowning, and Michael can't save him. What about the clients? I asked. They're getting nervous. That big financial services company called yesterday asking specifically for you. When they found out you were leaving, they demanded a meeting with your replacement. Apparently, Wesley's performance didn't inspire confidence. Even Darren's attitude changed. Where once there had been condescension, now there was a grudging respect, even nervousness. He stopped by my desk with an unusually humble request. I was wondering if you could walk me through the reporting module before you leave, he said. I might need to help support it after you're gone. Everything is documented in the knowledge base, I replied. But I can answer specific questions if you have them. He nodded, then hesitated. For what it's worth, I think you got a raw deal. Wesley isn't qualified to run a lemonade stand, let alone customer connect. On day 8, Lisa informed me that several other developers were updating their resumes. Nobody wants to be left holding the bag when customer connect starts falling apart. Plus, if you found something better, they figure they can too. Michael's desperate attempts to retain me continued. He scheduled daily meetings to check in on the transition, each one eventually turning into another attempt to get me to stay. What if we created a new position? Chief Technical Architect, reporting directly to me with a 30% salary increase. I've already accepted another position, I reminded him. We could match their offer and add a signing bonus to make up for the inconvenience. When incentives failed, he tried guilt. The company has invested millions in Customer Connect. Your leaving puts that investment at risk. The company chose to put Wesley in charge, despite his lack of qualifications. That decision put the investment at risk. By the end of the first week, rumors were circulating about an emergency board meeting regarding the Customer Connect succession crisis, as it was being called. Lisa, who had connections in the executive assistant pool, confirmed it. Edward Parker is furious, she told me, over drinks after work. Apparently, he expected his nephew to get mentorship and experience, not be thrown into a leadership role he can't handle. He's blaming Michael for setting Wesley up to fail. On day 10, I received an unexpected visitor, Edward Parker himself. The board member arrived at my desk, unannounced, his expensive suit and commanding presence drawing curious glances from nearby developers. Miss Williams, he said formally, I wonder if we might speak privately. We used a small conference room where Edward got straight to the point. I understand you're leaving because my nephew was promoted over you. I'm leaving because I received a better opportunity, I corrected. Edward's eyes narrowed. Let's not play games. Wesley told me you've been uncooperative and resentful since his promotion. He says you're deliberately sabotaging his transition by withholding critical information. I felt a flash of anger, but kept my expression neutral. With all due respect, that's not accurate. I've created comprehensive documentation for every aspect of Customer Connect and spent hours explaining the system to Wesley. The problem isn't my attitude. It's that Wesley lacks the technical background to understand the platform he's been put in charge of. He has a computer science degree. Having a degree and having practical experience are very different things. Wesley doesn't understand basic programming concepts, let alone the architecture of an enterprise platform. Edward frowned. Are you suggesting my nephew is incompetent? I'm stating that he's unqualified for the specific role he's been given. That's not a reflection on his potential in other areas. So you are leaving out of spite. I took a deep breath. Mr. Parker, I've prepared extensive transition documentation. Would you like to review it? Without waiting for an answer, I opened my laptop and pulled up the knowledge base I had created. I walked him through the detailed guides, video tutorials, and commented code repositories. Every aspect of Customer Connect is documented here. I've spent my notice period creating this resource specifically so the team won't be dependent on my personal knowledge. If Wesley is struggling despite having access to all this information, that's not sabotage on my part. Edward studied the screen, then looked at me with a slightly different expression. This is quite thorough. I take pride in my work, Mr. Parker. I want Customer Connect to succeed even after I'm gone. He was quiet for a moment. What would it take to convince you to stay? Name your price. It's not about money. It's about respect and recognition for my contributions. Fine. We can discuss a new title, reporting structure, whatever you want. I shook my head. I've already accepted another position. My decision is final. Edward's professional demeanor slipped. Do you have any idea how much disruption your departure is causing? The board is questioning the entire leadership of the technical division because of this mess. That's unfortunate, but it's the result of decisions made by management, not my resignation. He stood abruptly. I hope your new position is worth burning this bridge. I remained seated, looking up at him calmly. Some bridges aren't worth maintaining, Mr. Parker. The final days brought increasingly desperate offers from TechVision. On my last day, I received an email from the CEO himself proposing double my current salary, a director-level position, and a significant equity package. I declined politely and continued cleaning out my desk. My final meeting was with HR for the standard exit interview. Diane looked uncomfortable as she went through the checklist. "We've never had quite this reaction to someone leaving," she admitted. "The offers they've made to retain you are unprecedented." "Too little too late," I said simply. As I turned in my laptop and badge, Michael appeared for one final attempt. "This is a mistake you'll regret," he said, desperation evident in his voice. "You're walking away from a platform you built from the ground up. Wesley can't handle it, and you know it." I smiled. "As you said, Michael Customer Connect is a company product, not my personal project. I'm sure TechVision will manage. After all, Wesley's got this." I walked out of TechVision for the last time with my head high and a sense of vindication warming my chest. My phone rang before I even reached my car. It was the CISO from the financial services client, the one from the disastrous presentation. "Bernadette, I heard you're leaving TechVision. Is that true?" "Today was my last day," I confirmed. "We have serious concerns about the future of Customer Connect without you." The presentation with that young man Wesley did not inspire confidence. "I've left detailed documentation and transition materials," I assured him. "Documentation isn't the same as expertise. We're considering our options regarding our Customer Connect contract. Would you be open to discussing consulting work with us directly?" I smiled. "I'm starting a new position in a week, but I might be available for limited consulting. Why don't you email me the details?" Just 1 week after my departure, Lisa called with news. "Customer Connect crashed during a major client demo," she said, with barely contained glee. "Complete system failure. Wesley tried to make a minor configuration change and brought down the entire platform. Nobody could figure out how to fix it because nobody understood your architecture well enough." "What about the documentation I left?" "Oh, they're using it, but there's a difference between following instructions and actually understanding why things work the way they do." 2 days later, my phone displayed a familiar number, Michael Harrison. "Bernadette," he said, his voice strained. "We have an emergency situation with Customer Connect." "I'm sorry to hear that. We need your help. The system is experiencing critical issues that we can't resolve. We're willing to pay your consulting rate, whatever it is." I named a figure 3 times my former hourly rate. There was only the briefest hesitation before Michael agreed. "Send me the details and I'll see what I can do," I said. Meanwhile, my new position as Director of Development at InnovateX was everything TechVision had not been. My contributions were recognized and valued. My team respected my technical knowledge and leadership. When I proposed new ideas, they were evaluated on merit rather than politics. Over the following months, I consulted for TechVision just enough to keep Customer Connect running while they scrambled to hire developers who could understand the system. I set firm boundaries on my time and charged premium rates for emergency assistance. Through Lisa, who still worked there, I heard the full aftermath of my departure. Wesley had been quietly moved to a special projects role with no actual responsibilities. Michael had received a formal reprimand from the board for his mishandling of the situation. And Customer Connect, once the company's rising star, was now considered a problem child, with clients increasingly nervous about its stability. The most satisfying news came 3 months after I left, when Lisa called to tell me she'd given her notice. "Guess where I'm going?" she asked. "Where?" "InnovateX. I interviewed with your VP yesterday. I start in 2 weeks." She wasn't the last. Over the next 6 months, 4 more of TechVision's best developers joined us at InnovateX, bringing with them their talent and a shared appreciation for a company that actually valued technical excellence. As for TechVision, their stock dropped 15% after 2 quarters of declining revenue, attributed largely to technical challenges with their flagship product. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about fighting back. It's about walking away and letting the consequences of poor decisions unfold naturally. 6 months after leaving TechVision, my new life at InnovateX had exceeded all expectations. As Director of Development, I led a team of 20 talented engineers who actually appreciated technical expertise and creative problem-solving. My approach to leadership was shaped by my experience at TechVision, but inverted transparency where there had been secrecy recognition, where there had been credit stealing, and respect where there had been dismissal. Each team member's contributions were acknowledged in our documentation and presentations. I made sure executives knew exactly who had developed key features. When junior developers came up with innovative solutions, they presented their own work, rather than having me take the spotlight. Meanwhile, news from TechVision continued to validate my decision to leave. Lisa, who had followed me to InnovateX, along with several other former colleagues, maintained connections with people still there. TechVision's stock dropped another 8% after they missed their earnings target. She informed me one morning over coffee. Apparently, they've lost 3 major clients who were using Customer Connect. The system has become so unstable, they can't rely on it anymore. What about Wesley? I asked, more curious than vindictive. Shuffled off to the marketing department where he can't break anything important. Rumor has it his uncle finally realized he wasn't cut out for technical roles. And Michael? Lisa grinned. This is the best part. They brought in a new CTO from outside, and one of her first moves was to restructure the technical leadership. Michael was demoted to senior project manager. No more direct reports. No more strategic decision-making. I felt a complex mix of emotions, satisfaction, that reality had finally caught up with them, but also a twinge of sadness for the platform I'd created. Customer Connect had been built with care and vision. Watching it deteriorate from neglect and mismanagement was like hearing a once beautiful instrument being played poorly. The healing process had been gradual but steady. For the first few weeks after leaving TechVision, I would wake up with that familiar knot of anxiety phantom stress from a toxic environment. Gradually, that faded, replaced by genuine enthusiasm for my new role. I rediscovered my passion for coding, spending occasional evenings working on personal projects just for the joy of creation. Without the politics and backstabbing of TechVision, programming became fun again rather than a battleground. One of my greatest satisfactions came from mentoring junior developers. I thought often of how differently things might have gone if Wesley had been humble enough to actually learn, instead of expecting accolades for simply showing up. I made sure our interns and new hires received proper guidance, challenging tasks appropriate to their skill level, and recognition for their growth. My personal life flourished as well. James had been my rock throughout the ordeal, and 6 months after my career change, he proposed during a weekend hiking trip in the mountains. As we sat watching the sunset from a rocky outcrop, he took my hand. "You know what I realized when you were going through that mess at TechVision?" he asked. "That you are the strongest, most principled person I've ever met. When everything was falling apart, you didn't compromise your values or your dignity. I want to spend my life with someone like that." The ring was simple and elegant, just like his proposal. I said yes, without hesitation. My new workplace allowed me a healthy work-life balance I'd never experienced at TechVision. I left at reasonable hours, took actual weekends off, and even used my vacation days. The company culture recognized that rested, balanced employees produced better work than burnt-out husks running on caffeine and deadline panic. I also reconnected with former colleagues who had left TechVision before me, people who had experienced similar situations and moved on to healthier environments. Their stories helped me realize that what happened wasn't unique to me or even to TechVision. Corporate politics and credit stealing happened everywhere, but some companies worked to minimize it, while others, like TechVision, allowed it to become part of their culture. One evening during a team dinner celebrating a successful product launch, our CEO raised a toast to Bernadette and her team, who delivered not just on time but with code so elegant our maintenance costs will be half what we budgeted. This is what happens when you hire the best and then actually listen to them. The contrast with my TechVision experience couldn't have been more stark. Here, technical excellence was valued alongside business acumen. No one was asked to just be grateful for the opportunity to have their work appropriated. 3 former TechVision developers now worked on my team at InnovateX. They had each reached out after hearing about my new role, seeking the same escape from a toxic environment. I took particular satisfaction in seeing them thrive in a healthy workplace. I forgot what it was like to actually enjoy coming to work, Ryan, a former TechVision senior developer told me. I was ready to leave the industry altogether before I joined your team. The lessons I learned from my TechVision experience were numerous and valuable. Document everything. Not just code, but contributions, agreements, and promises made. Pay attention to company culture from day one. The small disrespects often grow into larger betrayals. Recognize red flags, early unqualified people, being promoted contributions, going unacknowledged political connections, outweighing merit. Maintain professional networks outside your current employer. The relationships you build throughout your career can be lifelines when you need to make a change. Your skills belong to you, even if the specific code you write belongs to your employer. Sometimes walking away with dignity is more powerful than fighting a broken system. Know your worth, and don't stay where it isn't recognized. 9 months after my departure, I received a LinkedIn message from Sandra, my former supervisor at TechVision. Thought you'd want to know that Michael is leaving. The new CTO has completed her reorganization, and there's no place for him in the new structure. Customer Connect is being completely rebuilt from scratch by an outside consultant. Too many Band-Aid fixes made the original architecture unstable. Hope you're doing well at InnovateX. They're lucky to have you. I smiled as I read it. Not out of malice for Michael's fate, but because it confirmed what I had known all along: technical debt, like any other debt, eventually comes due. No amount of political maneuvering can save a product when its foundation is compromised. The final validation came a year after leaving TechVision, when our team at InnovateX launched a new client management platform that quickly gained market share, including several former Customer Connect clients. We had built something that honored the best ideas from my previous work, while improving on areas where I'd learned valuable lessons. At the launch party, surrounded by a team that genuinely appreciated each other's contributions, I reflected on how completely my professional life had transformed. The bitterness had faded, replaced by gratitude for the lessons and the new beginning. Sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect isn't an argument or a lawsuit. It's simply removing your talent from the equation and letting them feel your absence. TechVision had learned that lesson the hard way, and I had learned that my value wasn't defined by their recognition or lack thereof, but by what I knew I could create. Have you ever experienced a situation where walking away was more powerful than fighting back? Drop your story in the comments below. And if you found my journey helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences about standing up for yourself in the workplace. Remember, sometimes your biggest career growth comes from knowing when to close one door so another can open. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to recognize your own value, even when others fail to do so.